I didn't catch my wife cheating the way people imagine. No lipstick on a collar, no midnight motel. I caught it in my own kitchen, under warm lights, with my son laughing in the next room. Her phone lit up with a message from a coworker. "Miss you, baby." I answered for her. "Come over." What walked through my front door wasn't romance. It was control. If you've ever been pushed past your limits, hit subscribe and stay with me, because this story might sound painfully familiar. And it made me wonder, what would you do if silence started erasing you? My shift ended the way most of them did, late, sweaty, and loud. The guys joked while we cleaned the rig, and I nodded along like my brain wasn't still stuck in the last call. A kitchen fire on the west side. A woman coughing hard enough to scare her own kids. Nothing dramatic for the news. Just the kind of day that leaves ash under your nails even after you scrub. I checked my phone before I pulled out of the station. 2 missed calls from Jaden. I called back right away. "Dad, I'm good," he said. "Coach let me use his phone. You coming?" "Already on the way," I told him. Traffic on Providence was thick. I drove with one hand on the wheel, the other rubbing my face, trying to peel the day off. When I reached the gym, Jaden came out bouncing on tired legs, basketball tucked under his arm like it was part of him. "We won," he said before he even got in the truck. "Yeah?" I glanced at him. "How many you drop?" 12, he grinned. And I blocked Evan, like, for real. Everybody saw. That boy could talk. He talked about plays, about a kid who got benched, about the assistant coach who wore the same shoes every day. I listened, half smiling, letting it wash over me. Home talk. Normal talk. The kind of talk that made me believe I still knew what my life was. We got home a little after 7. Tasha was at the stove, moving around the kitchen with that focused rhythm she had when she cooked. She didn't look up right away. "Hey, baby," she said, voice light. "Wash your hands. Food's almost ready." Jaden tossed his bag by the door and headed for the sink. I hung my jacket on the chair, rolled my shoulders, and loosened the heavy feeling in my chest that always followed me home from the station. Tasha's phone buzzed on the counter, not once, twice. She was stirring something, back turned. The phone lit up in my line of sight. I wasn't trying to snoop. I wasn't even thinking about her phone. The screen just flashed. A name. Ethan Caldwell. Then the message preview. "Miss you, baby." My body froze like somebody had shouted fire in a quiet room. No sound came out of me, no movement, just a hard stop inside my chest. Jaden kept talking at the sink. "Dad, you think I can try out for varsity next year?" The faucet ran, water splashed, life kept going. My eyes stayed on that screen like it was the only thing left in the world that mattered. Tasha didn't notice, or she pretended not to. I reached for the phone with hands that still knew how to act calm. Thumbs moved like they belonged to somebody else. I opened the message and typed back before I let myself think too much. "Come over." 3 words, no exclamation point, no anger, no questions, just a door left open on purpose. I set the phone back exactly where it had been. Same angle, same spot on the counter. Then I walked to the table and sat down like I hadn't just watched my marriage crack. Tasha served dinner. Jaden talked about school. I chewed and swallowed and nodded at the right times. A firefighter learns early how to keep his breathing steady in smoke. That skill doesn't disappear when the smoke is inside your own house. After we finished eating, I grabbed the trash bag and stepped outside. The air was cold enough to sting a little, and it felt good on my face. I stood on the porch for a moment with the bag hanging from my hand, staring out at the street like I might find an answer parked under a street sign. Somewhere down the block, a car passed. Tires hissed on asphalt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't pull it out right away. I just stood there, feeling that familiar instinct rise, the one that told me to smooth things over, to keep the peace, to act like nothing was happening. Then my thumb slid into my pocket anyway, and I checked the screen as I stepped off the porch. Jaden slammed the refrigerator door and grabbed his backpack like he was already late, even though we had time. "Dad, you coming to the game Friday, right?" "I'll be there," I said. Same as always. He didn't notice anything. Kids don't. Not until the adults around them make it their problem. Tasha stood by the sink, rinsing out a coffee mug, hair pulled up, face calm. She moved like last night never happened, like no stranger had called her baby in my own kitchen. You want eggs? She asked without turning around. I'm good. Jaden kissed her cheek on the way out. Bye, Mom. Love you, she replied, sweet and easy. I watched her for half a second longer than I should have. Nothing in her posture said guilt. Nothing said panic. That was the part that messed with me. If she had looked scared or defensive, I could have put it in a box. If she had snapped at me, I could have named it. Instead, she was gentle. That kind of gentleness can be a weapon when you don't know what you're fighting. We drove through Myers Park with the usual morning traffic, and the usual parents doing the same thing I was doing, dropping off, rushing to work, trying to keep the world spinning. Jaden talked about a math quiz. A girl in his class who cried because she forgot her lunch. Normal stuff. I kept my eyes on the road and my mind on one line of text. Miss you, baby. I let Jaden out in front of the school. He jogged toward the entrance, then turned back and waved. I waved too. My hand looked steady. My stomach wasn't. On the way back, I pulled into a cafe in South End because I needed somewhere to put my body that wasn't home. I ordered a black coffee, sat at a small table, and stared at the cup like it might start talking. The first sip tasted like nothing. I tried another. Still nothing. Across the room, a couple laughed over their phones. A man in a suit typed an email with both thumbs. Everybody looked like they belonged to their day. Mine felt borrowed. I went home after 10 minutes. Tasha was there, folding laundry in the living room like a woman who had nothing to hide. She glanced up and smiled. You okay? You barely ate. Just tired. I packed you lunch, she said. It's on the counter. That word, packed, hit me hard. She was doing wife things. The kind of wife things that make you feel crazy for doubting. I picked up the lunch bag anyway, not because I wanted it, because refusing it felt like starting a fight I wasn't ready to finish. At the station, the guys noticed right away. Cap, one of them said, you look like you got hit by a truck. Truck missed, I answered. They laughed. I smiled at the right moment. I ran the morning briefing. I checked the rigs. I signed off on reports. I did everything the way I always did, but my phone felt heavier in my pocket. During a break, I opened the parent group chat for Jaden's team. A message sat near the top, from a dad I'd met once. Y'all hear Tasha got her boss wrapped around her finger? No emojis, no joking tone. Just the kind of throwaway comment people make when they think it can't hurt anybody. A couple of responses popped up underneath. Don't start. Leave folks alone. But it was out there now. And once something is out there, it doesn't go back in. I didn't reply. I stared at the screen until my thumb cramped, then locked the phone and slid it back into my pocket. By lunchtime, I texted Nadine Carter. She answered with an address and a time. No questions. Her office sat in Uptown, tucked into a building that smelled like old carpet and new ink. She looked exactly like the kind of woman you don't waste words with. Sharp eyes, straight back, no softness in her tone. I told her what happened. I didn't embellish. I didn't ask her to feel sorry for me. I just laid it out like facts in a report. When I finished, she leaned back and held my gaze. You want the truth, she said. Don't ask with your mouth. Ask with evidence. I swallowed. So I don't confront her. Not yet, Nadine replied. And when you do it clean. No yelling, no threats. Because the minute you look unstable, the story changes. You hear me? I nodded once. She slid a small notepad across the desk. Start writing down dates, times, names, save messages. Don't delete anything, and don't touch him. I wasn't planning to. Good, she said, because pride is expensive in court. When I walked out, the wind cut through my jacket. I stood by my truck for a minute and opened my phone camera, not even thinking about why. A new text from Jaden sat at the top. Dad, remember my game Friday? I typed back fast. I got you. Then I stared at those words like they were the only solid thing I had, and I climbed into the driver's seat without turning the heater on. I drove straight from the station to Kroger in Dilworth with Nadine's notepad on the passenger seat like it belonged there. The list wasn't long. Chicken, rice, vegetables, Jaden's cereal. Regular things. The kind of stuff you buy when you're pretending your life is still simple. Inside, I moved down the aisles on autopilot, grabbed a cart, picked up what we needed, tried not to check my phone every 30 seconds. When I turned toward the pharmacy, I saw Tasha. She wasn't shopping. She stood near the over-the-counter shelves with her purse clutched tight under her arm, shoulders lifted, eyes darting like she was waiting for someone to appear. Her phone sat in her hand, screen facing her, thumb hovering. That wasn't the face of a woman comparing vitamins. I pushed the cart closer. My wheels squeaked a little, and her head snapped up. For a split second, her expression went flat, like she'd been caught doing something she couldn't explain. Then she forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh," she said. "Hey, I didn't know you were here." Her hand flipped the phone screen down so fast it almost looked like a reflex. "I was just picking up something," she added. I stopped beside her, kept my voice even. "For who?" She blinked, too long. "For me," she said. "Allergies." I looked at the shelf in front of her, nothing in her hands, no box, no bottle. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said quickly. Why wouldn't I be? That question came out sharp, almost annoyed, not angry, defensive. I nodded once like I believed her, like I didn't know what defense sounded like. Then I pushed the cart past her. "Let's go home," I said. On the drive back, she talked too much. About a coworker's baby shower, about a sale she missed, about traffic. Every sentence felt like she was filling space so nothing else could fit. At home, Jaden was on the couch with his homework spread out, watching TV in between problems. Tasha kissed his forehead and went straight to the kitchen to start dinner like she needed something to do with her hands. Later, when Jaden went to shower, I leaned against the counter and asked a question that should have been nothing. "How's work going?" She didn't turn around. "Fine." "You still on that big project?" A pause, long enough to make me notice. "Marcus," she said, "don't do this." "Do what?" She finally faced me, eyes tired. "Don't make everything into something. I can't deal with you overthinking right now." Overthinking. That word hit harder than I expected, because a part of me wondered if she was right. A part of me remembered my first marriage, how I'd read signs wrong sometimes, how my mind had stayed stuck in old pain long after it should have healed. Maybe I was seeing ghosts. Maybe I was making a mess out of nothing. I went to bed with that thought, and it sat on my chest like a weight. The next morning, I walked into the living room and saw paper sticking out of the printer tray. Tasha must have hit print by accident and forgotten, or didn't realize it went through. I pulled the pages out and scanned the top line. Confidential. Below it, a meeting invite with several names, including Ethan Caldwell's. There was a note at the bottom. Audit review. Do not discuss. I read it twice, then a third time. My heart didn't race. It slowed down. This wasn't just flirting. This wasn't just a workplace crush. This was files, process, power. I took out my phone and snapped photos of every page, careful to catch the date and time stamps. Then I slid the papers back like I'd never touched them. After Tasha left for work with her lunchbox in hand, I locked the door behind her and stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the quiet settle. I opened Nadine's notepad and wrote down what I'd seen. Then I turned on the voice recorder on my phone, tested it once, and slipped a small camera into the corner of the living room bookshelf where it looked like nothing at all. I was tightening the straps on my turnout pants when my phone rang. Providence Day School. That number didn't call unless something went wrong. I stepped away from the guys and answered. "Mr. Reed?" a woman said. "This is Mrs. Harmon, assistant principal. We need you to come in as soon as you can. There's been an incident involving Jaden." My stomach dipped. "Is he hurt?" "He's okay," she said. "But there was a fight. I told the lieutenant I had to step out. Nobody asked questions. They just nodded. In my line of work, you learn fast that bad news doesn't wait for permission. By the time I got to the school, Jaden sat in a small office chair with his arms crossed, jaw locked. His knuckles were red. A boy about his size stood across the room, crying into his hoodie. 2 teachers hovered like referees. Mrs. Harmon motioned me over. "Jaden pushed him into a locker," she said quietly. "We need to talk about what led up to it." Jaden didn't look at me. He stared at the floor. I kept my voice low. "What happened?" The other boy wiped his face and spoke first, still sniffling. "I just said what everybody knows," he said. "His mom be with some dude." The words landed like a slap. Not because I believed the kid, because he was bold enough to say it out loud, in a school hallway, like it was gossip worth trading. Mrs. Harmon cleared her throat. There have been comments, she said carefully, among students. Jaden's been reacting. Jaden's shoulders tightened. His eyes stayed forward, but I could see his throat working like he was swallowing something that hurt. I breathed through my nose, slow, controlled, the way Nadine told me to. Jaden, I said, did you hit him? He nodded once. He wouldn't stop, he muttered. My son wasn't a violent kid. He didn't pick fights. He held doors for teachers. He helped his teammates tie their shoes. If he swung, it meant he felt cornered. Mrs. Harmon went over the school policy, suspension, restorative talk, the whole script. I nodded at the right places and signed what needed signing. The entire time, I could feel parents' eyes drifting toward me through the hallway window. Curious, measuring, quiet. On the walk to the car, Jaden stayed silent. No complaints, no excuses. Just that stiff, embarrassed, quiet kids carry when they've been forced into something they don't fully understand. I opened the passenger door for him. He climbed in and stared out the window. Driving home, I kept both hands on the wheel, jaw tight enough to ache. Every part of me wanted to turn the car around and go straight to Tasha's job. Every part of me wanted to find Ethan Caldwell and make sure he never spoke my family's name again. Instead, I drove like a man trying not to spill a cup of scalding coffee in his lap. At home, Jaden went straight to his room. I heard drawers open and close. A backpack hit the floor. Then nothing. Tasha didn't get home until after 9. She walked in with her shoulders slumped, eyes dull. When she set her purse down, her sleeve slid up. A red mark circled her wrist, like someone had grabbed her hard. I didn't point at it. I didn't ask what happened in a tone that gave her room to lie. I just looked. Long day? I said. She exhaled. I'm tired, Marcus. Then she walked past me, straight to the bathroom and shut the door. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, staring at the spot where her wrist had been, replaying the kid's words at school. His mom be with some dude. The next morning, back at the station, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I stepped into the bay and answered. A man's voice came through, low and amused. You better keep your wife on a leash. Then the line went dead. I didn't move, didn't speak, just held the phone while my crew looked over, waiting for a joke that wasn't coming. The air shifted around me, and I could feel it. The moment people stopped seeing me as Captain Reed and started seeing me as a man with a problem. I slid the phone into my pocket, walked back toward the rig, and grabbed Nadine's notepad from my locker. Nadine texted me an address an hour north of town. Come alone, she added. The place sat near Lake Norman, the kind of quiet bar where people drank slowly and didn't talk to strangers. Nadine already had a booth. No smile, no small talk. She slid her phone across the table like she was handing the evidence in a case. Watch, she said. On her screen was a video clip. A woman's face, close enough to be anyone, spliced onto a body doing things no decent person would ever want attached to their name. The audio sounded real. The expressions looked real. It felt real until your brain caught up and started spotting the small mistakes. I stared at it longer than I wanted to. Nadine took her phone back. Deep fake, she said. Cheap, fast, effective. That's... My throat tightened. That's what he's using? If he's smart, she replied. He doesn't need it to be true. He just needs it to be believable. I didn't touch my drink. My hands stayed folded on the table. And if it gets out? Nadine's eyes held mine. Then the first thing people will ask isn't whether it's fake, she said. They'll ask what she did to deserve it, and what you did not to see it. That hit me harder than the anonymous phone call, because it was true. She leaned forward. If he's targeting her, he's targeting you too. Your job, your kid, your reputation. Men like that don't stop at one win. I drove home with my jaw tight, the notepad on the passenger seat, and a new kind of fear sitting under my ribs. Not fear of losing my wife, fear of watching my son get dragged into something ugly. Tasha fell asleep early that night. Jaden crashed on the couch with his homework half finished, head tilted against a pillow. I carried him to bed, tucked him in, then walked back into the living room and stood there for a minute, listening to the house settle. Tasha's laptop sat on the desk. I had the password. She'd given it to me years ago, back when trust was easy and nothing felt complicated. I opened it anyway. The email inbox showed a few deleted messages in the trash folder. One subject line jumped out: payment confirmation. I clicked. The email was short, an internal notice with a dollar amount and an account reference. Not huge money, just enough to raise questions. Someone had forwarded it to Tasha with one line attached: do not discuss, audit pending. I checked the downloads folder. A couple of strange files sat there with names that looked like auto-generated codes. I opened one and saw a blurred thumbnail that made my stomach drop. I closed it fast, like it could burn me through the screen. The next morning, the sky outside was still dark when I walked into the kitchen. Tasha was already there, staring at her phone like she hadn't slept. I set my phone on the table between us. I need to know who's got you by the throat, I said. Her eyes flashed with panic. Then her face collapsed. Marcus, she whispered. Don't lie, I said, calm but flat. Not now. Tasha shook her head, tears spilling over. Please, she said. Don't pull yourself into this. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed again. A number with no name. I watched her flinch. She turned the screen toward me without a word. A text preview sat on the lock screen. If you open your mouth, I post everything. I looked past her toward the living room where Jaden lay curled up on the couch, still asleep, one sock halfway off his foot. My hands didn't shake, but something inside me shifted into place, cold and clear, as I reached for Nadine's number. Tasha kept her eyes on the table while I dialed Nadine. She didn't beg me to stop, didn't ask what I was doing. That scared me more than the threat on her phone. Nadine answered on the second ring. Tell me you didn't respond, she said. I didn't, I replied. Good. Screenshot it, then put the phone down and listen. I did exactly that. Tasha's hands trembled when she handed me her phone, but she let me take the pictures. When I finished, I slid it back to her. Nadine's voice came through steady. He's escalating, she said, which means he's either getting desperate or he thinks he's untouchable. What do I do? You do what you do at work, she said. You prepare. You don't run into the fire. You control it. By lunchtime, Nadine had a checklist for me. I wrote it out in my own hand, because writing something down makes it real. Save every message. Back up her email. Record calls if your state allows it. Install dashcam. Document dates, times, locations. No direct confrontation alone. If he comes near the house, call police. File for a restraining order. That last line mattered. It meant the law had a place for this. It meant I didn't have to be some angry husband throwing punches. I could keep my dignity and still hit back. That night, I told Tasha I had to leave town for 2 days. We've got federal training, I said. Columbia. I'll be back quick. She nodded too fast. Okay. No questions. No be safe. Just a flat acceptance. Like she was relieved I'd be gone. I hated myself for noticing that. Jaden heard training and got excited, because he liked anything that sounded official. You gonna be around the big trucks? He asked. Always, I said. You'll be good with Mom? He shrugged like he didn't care, but he leaned into my side for a second when I ruffled his hair. That little gesture landed in my chest like an anchor. The next morning, I drove south, but I didn't go to Columbia. I stopped at a motel off the highway, the kind of place with thin curtains and a parking lot full of work vans. I checked in under my name, paid with my card, and asked for a room facing the lot. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and called Nadine. You set? She asked. I'm here. Good, she said. Now you wait, and you don't slip up. We spent an hour going through steps. She walked me through how to export Tasha's emails properly, how to keep the screenshots backed up in 2 places, and how to label everything so a judge wouldn't have to guess. She also told me to stop talking to anyone at the station about it, even the people you trust, she said. Why? Because people repeat things they shouldn't, she answered. And men like Ethan feed on noise. I hung up and got to work. I copied files. I saved receipts. I wrote timelines. I installed the dash cam when I got back into town. I kept my face neutral when Jaden asked if I was tired. Just a long drive, I said. On Saturday, I took Jaden fishing at Latta Nature Preserve. He didn't catch much, but he laughed when the bait kept slipping off the hook. I watched him the whole time, trying to keep my mind in that moment. My phone buzzed every so often. Unknown numbers. Short texts that didn't say anything directly, but still felt like hands around my throat. You sure you want to do this? Tell your wife I'm patient. Don't make it worse. I didn't answer any of them. I saved them all. That night, after Jaden went to bed, I saw a car parked across the street from our house. Dark sedan, engine running, no headlights. I stepped outside without shoes, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. The car rolled forward immediately and turned the corner like it had never been there. I stood on the porch with my arms crossed, staring at the empty street, then went back inside and checked the camera I'd set on the bookshelf. Battery full, memory card clear. I packed a small bag like I was leaving for work and told Tasha I needed to head back out in the morning to finish training. She didn't argue. She didn't stop me. Later, in that motel room again, I sat with my laptop open and my phone face down beside me. Trucks rumbled past outside. I checked the camera feed once, then again. Not because I was nervous, because I was ready. The motel Wi-Fi lagged, so the camera feed stuttered every few seconds. I hated that. I wanted clean footage, clear audio, no gaps anyone could twist later. I refreshed the app again, thumb tapping hard enough to make my nail bend. Then the living room camera caught movement. Tasha walked in from the hallway with her phone in her hand. She stopped near the couch, staring at the screen like it was burning her. Even through the grainy feed, I recognized that posture. The way her shoulders rose when she tried not to shake. A message popped up on her lock screen. I couldn't read it at first. The angle was wrong. She lifted the phone closer to her face, and the screen brightened. I'm outside. My breath caught. I grabbed my keys off the motel table so fast they clinked. I didn't bother with a jacket, didn't check anything twice. I ran out, started the truck, and pulled onto the highway with one thought repeating in my head. Not in front of my son. Halfway back, my phone buzzed again. Doorbell alert. I pressed harder on the gas. When I reached the neighborhood, I didn't park in the driveway. I stopped a house down and walked fast, keeping my steps quiet on the pavement. The porch light was on. The curtains were drawn. From the outside, it looked like any other night. I opened my front door. The sound hit me first, Jaden's cartoon playing low from the living room. Somebody had turned the volume down like they were trying to be polite. Then I saw him. Ethan Caldwell sat on my couch, one arm stretched across the back like he'd paid the mortgage. He wore a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled neatly, shoes still on. In his hand was a glass of water, like my house was a restaurant. Tasha stood near the kitchen entry, hands clasped tight, face drained. She wasn't leaning toward him. She wasn't smiling. She looked like someone trapped in a room with no exits. Ethan looked up and smiled slow. "Well," he said, "look who's home." I closed the door behind me, calm on the outside, lungs burning on the inside. "Shoes off," I said. He laughed like I'd told a joke. "You always this strict?" I walked to the TV stand and grabbed the remote. My fingers didn't shake. I didn't let them. I clicked through the inputs until the camera feed filled the screen. Ethan's smile twitched when he saw himself on my couch. "That's cute," he said. "You been playing detective?" "I've been documenting," I answered. I pulled my phone out, hit record, and set it face up on the coffee table. Ethan leaned forward a little, eyes glittering. "You think she belongs to you?" he asked. The words landed exactly where he wanted them to land. Right on my pride, right on my history, right on every ugly stereotype a man like him could throw at a black husband who dared to stand up. My jaw tightened. My hands stayed loose. "I think you're in my house," I said. Tasha whispered my name. "Marcus?" I didn't look at her. Not yet. If I looked, I might soften. If I softened, he'd win. Ethan lifted his phone and tapped his screen. "Here's what's going to happen," he said. "You're going to calm down. You're going to let me leave. And you're going to stop sniffing around." "Or what?" He tilted his head. "Or Jaden's school gets a video," he said. "And your little firehouse buddies get one too. I'm sure they'll love seeing their captain's wife." Tasha made a small sound, like she'd been punched. For a moment, I saw it. Jaden's face when kids whispered. My crew's eyes when they heard that anonymous call. The principal's careful voice at the school. He wasn't threatening my marriage. He was threatening my name. Nadine's words came back to me, clear as a bell. Pride is expensive in court. I picked up my phone and called her anyway. No hesitation. No shame. Put it on speaker. She answered immediately. "Tell me he's not there," she said. "He's here," I replied, "in my living room." Ethan rolled his eyes. "Oh, you called your mommy." Nadine ignored him. "Marcus," she said, "do not touch him. Tell him he needs to leave. If he refuses, call police. Keep him talking." I looked at Ethan. "You need to go," I said. He stayed seated, like he didn't hear me. "You're making this worse," he replied, voice soft. "For her, for your son." I bent down, picked up his jacket from the chair by the door, and tossed it onto the porch. Then I opened the front door wide. "Get out," I said, voice flat, "before the police get here." Ethan stared at me, sizing me up, trying to decide if I'd finally snap. Behind him, Tasha's knees shook like she might fold. I kept my eyes on him while my thumb hovered over the emergency call button, waiting to see which way he moved. Ethan stood up slow, like he was doing me a favor. He brushed imaginary lint off his shirt, glanced toward the hallway, and smiled like he expected Jaden to walk in and see him there. That was the kind of cruelty he carried, quiet, controlled, and aimed at what mattered. "You're overreacting," he said as he stepped toward the door. I came to talk. I held the door open and didn't move out of his way. "You came to threaten," I said. Ethan's eyes slid to my phone on the coffee table. "Make sure you get my good side," he muttered. He walked out. I followed him onto the porch, kept the camera pointed at his back, and watched him cross the lawn. He paused at the curb, turned, and gave me a small nod like we'd just finished a business meeting. Then he drove off. I shut the door and locked it. Twice. Tasha stayed where she was, hands pressed together so hard her knuckles turned pale. When she spoke, her voice barely carried. "He's been doing this for weeks." I didn't answer. I walked into Jaden's room first. He slept on his stomach, one arm hanging off the bed, breathing heavy like he'd run a marathon. I pulled the door mostly closed, leaving it cracked, and went back to the kitchen. Tasha's phone sat on the counter. She picked it up and turned the screen toward me with trembling fingers. "This is what he has," she said. A video loaded. I knew before it played what it would be. My body still stiffened anyway. The woman in the clip looked like Tasha. Same face, same smile, same birthmark near her jawline. If you didn't know better, you'd swear it was her. But it wasn't. The movements were off, just slightly. The blink timing didn't match. The mouth lagged behind the audio by a fraction of a second. If you watched carefully, you could see the edges glitch for a split moment. That didn't matter. Not to the world. All people would see was her face. Tasha pulled the phone back like it hurt her to hold it. "He said if I didn't do what he wanted, he'd send it to HR, she whispered. "Then he said he'd send it to you. Then he said he'd send it to the school." He kept moving the target. I kept my voice low. What did he want? Tasha swallowed hard. Meetings, dinners. He'd text late, tell me to come downstairs to the parking deck. He made me sit in his car while he talked. He kept saying there was an audit coming and that my name was already on something. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd make it look like I stole money, like I changed numbers. He said he could make it real. I thought about the email, the payment confirmation, the audit pending line, the deleted message, the way her wrist looked. My hands clenched once, then relaxed. "Why didn't you tell me?" Tasha looked at the floor. "Because you already went through this once," she said, "and I didn't want to be the reason you lose another family." That sentence landed and stayed there between us. Nadine's voice still echoed in my ear. "Don't let this become a story about you being unstable. Don't let it turn into the angry husband." I picked up my keys. "We're going to the police," I said. Tasha blinked fast. "Marcus, no." "Yes," I cut in, not harsh, just firm. "Now." 20 minutes later, we sat in a small room at the Huntersville Police Department while an officer typed. Tasha spoke in broken pieces, pausing whenever shame crawled up her throat. I filled in gaps with dates and screenshots, kept the story anchored in facts, threats, deepfake, extortion, workplace manipulation, evidence saved. The officer asked if Ethan had ever touched her. Tasha hesitated, eyes darting toward me. I answered for myself. "He grabbed her wrist," I said. "You can still see the mark." The officer nodded and wrote it down. Nadine walked in before we finished the statement, dressed like she'd come from court. She didn't hug, didn't comfort. She laid a folder on the desk like it weighed nothing. "Here's the timeline," she said. "Here are screenshots, here are phone numbers. Here is a request for a temporary protective order." The officer looked from her to me, then back. The tone in the room changed right there. This wasn't a domestic dispute. This was a case. By morning, Ethan moved first. He emailed HR, claiming Tasha had pursued him. He made himself the victim. He hinted that I was violent, controlling, unstable. A rumor slipped into her office like smoke, then spread. Nadine forwarded me a copy. I read it once, then again. My stomach didn't twist anymore. It settled. He was following a playbook. I opened my notes and started connecting everything. The timestamps on those emails, the payment confirmation, the audit meeting invite, the week the rumors started at Jaden's school, the night Tasha came home with a bruised wrist, the anonymous call at the station. It wasn't random. It was pressure, applied in layers, until a person broke. I looked up at Nadine across her desk. "He touched company data," I said. "That's where he got careless." Nadine's mouth tightened, almost a smile. "Now you're thinking like a man who wants to win," she replied. I nodded once, pulled my phone out, and started drafting the list of records we'd request from the company. Access logs, email archives, payment approvals, while Nadine flipped to the next set of forms and slid them toward me. We left Charlotte before sunrise. Nadine drove. I sat in the passenger seat with a folder on my lap and my phone plugged in, backed up twice. Tasha stayed home with Jaden. That was my choice. Not because she didn't deserve to face it, but because I refused to let her walk into a room full of people who might already see her as guilty. Raleigh felt businesslike the moment we pulled into the parking deck. Tall buildings, clean sidewalks, people carrying coffee like it was armor. We checked in at the front desk and followed an HR assistant down a hallway. No one smiled. No one asked how we were doing. That suited me fine. The conference room was glass on two sides. Inside sat 3 people from HR, 1 company attorney, and an internal investigator with a notebook and a neutral face. Ethan was already there. He looked rested, hair neat, tie straight, like he'd prepared for a performance. He nodded at me as if we were equals. I didn't return it. An HR woman cleared her throat. "Mr. Reed, Ms. Carter, thank you for coming. We're here to address allegations of misconduct involving Mr. Caldwell and Ms. Tasha Reed." Ethan leaned forward, hands folded, eyes soft. "I want to start by saying I'm shocked this went this far," he said. "I tried to handle it privately." That was his first move. Paint himself as reasonable. I opened my folder and slid a timeline across the table. "Start with the messages," I said. "No speeches, no emotion, just the first domino." Ethan frowned and shook his head slightly. "She was the one who—" Nadine held up a hand. "Answer the question," she said. The internal investigator asked for screenshots. Nadine handed them over. Dates, times, phone numbers, threats that didn't sound like romance. Ethan shifted in his chair. "Marcus is jealous," he said. "He's been controlling her. I came by the house because she asked me to. He set me up. He had cameras. That's not normal." I watched him aim that sentence at the room, not at me. Controlling, not normal. I knew what he was doing. It was old as dirt. Make the black man look dangerous. Make the woman look confused. Make the company want to cut ties and move on. Nadine didn't blink. She slid another document forward. "Here are the access logs," she said. "Mr. Caldwell pulled files from restricted folders on dates he had no business accessing them. Here are the recovered emails he deleted. Here is the payment confirmation he forwarded with instructions not to discuss." The company attorney leaned in, eyes narrowing. The investigator flipped pages faster. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. Nadine played the audio next. His voice, clear as day, talking about sending a video to a child's school. Talking about ruining my reputation at the firehouse. Then she placed a still image on the table. Ethan on my couch, shoes on, water in his hand, smiling at my living room camera. HR stopped typing. The internal investigator looked up. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, "why were you in Mr. Reed's home after sending these threats?" Ethan's face changed. The calm dropped for a second, replaced by something sharp. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're letting them—" The HR director cut him off. "Stop," she said, voice flat. "You're being placed on administrative leave effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Ethan stood so fast his chair scraped. "You can't do this," he said louder, looking around like someone would save him. No one did. The investigator stepped out and spoke quietly into his phone. A minute later, the company attorney nodded once, jaw tight. I stood up without a word, gathered my folder, and walked out with Nadine beside me. The hallway felt longer on the way back, but my steps stayed steady. Behind us, the glass room door shut. The courthouse in Wake County didn't feel dramatic. It felt like paperwork and stale coffee, and people trying not to make eye contact. I'd been in worse places. Burning buildings had more warmth than that lobby. Nadine met me at the entrance with her usual expression. Calm, unreadable, prepared. "They're charging him," she said as we walked. "Extortion, harassment, unauthorized access, and because he altered internal records, they're adding the data piece." I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile. I just nodded and kept moving. Because the truth about winning is that it still costs you something. We sat through hearings that lasted minutes and took weeks out of my life. Ethan's attorney tried every angle, claimed it was a misunderstanding, claimed it was consensual, claimed I was overreacting. When that didn't work, he tried making Tasha look unstable. The judge didn't bite. A restraining order went through. Paper signed, stamped, slid across a desk like it was nothing more than a utility bill. Nadine leaned toward me and tapped the document. "This matters," she whispered. "If he comes near your house again, he's in violation. No gray area." A week later, the company emailed an official letter. Tasha was cleared of wrongdoing. No evidence of theft. No disciplinary action pending. They apologized in the careful language corporations use when they don't want to admit fear or guilt. I printed the letter and handed it to Tasha at the kitchen counter. She stared at it like it was a foreign language. "So, it's over?" she asked. Her voice sounded small. Not relieved, not happy, just exhausted. "It's over for him," I said. Tasha waited for me to add something else. She watched my face like she needed permission to hope. I didn't give it. Not because I wanted to punish her, because I couldn't pretend we were untouched. The law could stop Ethan. It couldn't rewind months of secrets. Jaden came into the room and saw the paper in Tasha's hands. "What's that?" he asked. Tasha forced a smile. "Just work stuff," she said. He accepted that and went back to the living room. He'd learned not to ask too many questions when adults sounded tense. That hurt more than anything. That night, Tasha tried to sit close to me on the couch. Her shoulder brushed mine. She smelled like shampoo and fatigue. She spoke softly, like she didn't want to startle me. "Marcus, I know I messed up," she said, "but I was scared. I didn't know how to." "I know," I replied. My voice came out flat, even though I didn't mean it to. The quiet between us thickened. Tasha swallowed. "Are you going to leave?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I wanted to drag it out, because the honest answer had been sitting in my chest for a while, and I'd been avoiding it. "I can't live like that," I said. "Not again." She blinked, eyes wet. "I didn't cheat," she whispered. "I know," I said. "And that's the part that makes it worse." Her face tightened like she'd been slapped. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "I'm not punishing you," I said, careful with every word. "But you let someone into our life and you carried it alone. You watched me walk around thinking I was losing my mind. You watched Jaden get bullied. You watched people talk about me at my job." Tasha shook her head fast. "I didn't want you to get hurt." I looked at her then, really looked. "I got hurt anyway," I said. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Tears slid down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly like she was embarrassed. I didn't reach for her hand. Silence can be merciful. It can also be honest. Over the next few weeks, we moved through the house like roommates learning a new language. We still cooked, still paid bills, still picked Jaden up from practice. But the air between us stayed tight, like a room after a storm when you know there's damage even if the roof is still there. I spoke to Nadine again, this time about a different kind of paperwork. "You sure?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm sure." She didn't judge. She just told me what to do. I started looking for a place outside Charlotte, somewhere quieter, somewhere Jaden could breathe without hearing whispers in school hallways, somewhere I could stop feeling like my own driveway was a battleground. We found a small town outside Asheville. Not fancy, just a simple rental house with a yard big enough for Jaden to throw a football, and a porch wide enough to sit on without needing to talk. Jaden wasn't thrilled at first. "I'll have to start over," he complained. "You started over before," I told him. He frowned. "When?" I didn't answer that. He didn't need my past. He needed his present. The day we signed the lease, I took him out for burgers and a milkshake. He talked through the whole meal, already imagining new teammates, new parks, new routes to school. His resilience made me proud and angry at the same time. Proud because he could adapt, angry because he had to. Tasha came with us to see the place, but she didn't step inside right away. She stood in the driveway and looked at the porch like she already knew it wasn't hers. Later, back in Charlotte, she folded her clothes into boxes without crying. No dramatic arguments, no throwing dishes, just quiet movement, a zipper closing, tape ripping, the sound of a life being packed up. We signed the separation papers at a small notary office off Independence Boulevard. A woman behind a desk checked our IDs, watched us sign, and stamped the documents with a bored rhythm like we were renewing car tags. Tasha kept her eyes on the table. "Do you hate me?" she asked, barely louder than a breath. I stared at the pen in my hand. "No," I said. "I don't hate you." Her shoulders dropped slightly, like she'd been holding that question for months. "Then why?" "Because love doesn't erase damage," I said, and handed the pen back. No sermon, no speech, just the truth placed down between us. On moving day, Jaden carried boxes like he was proving something. He acted excited, but I could see the way he kept glancing at Tasha, waiting for a moment that would make sense of all this. Tasha hugged him in the driveway, long, tight. She whispered something into his ear that I couldn't hear. Jaden nodded, blinking fast, then climbed into the truck without looking back. Tasha turned to me next. Her hands hovered in the air, unsure if she was allowed to touch me. "I'm sorry," she said. I nodded once, not forgiveness, not anger, just acknowledgement. She walked to her car and opened the door. Before she got in, she paused and looked toward the house, like she wanted to remember it before it disappeared. Then she drove away. I stood on the porch and watched the taillights fade past the bare trees. The street stayed quiet. No neighbors came out. No one clapped. No one watched from behind curtains. Life didn't care about my heartbreak. Jaden called my name from inside. "Dad, where do you want the game system?" "Living room," I answered. I walked back into the house, shut the front door, and turned the lock. Then I crossed the living room, reached for the lamp beside the couch, and switched it off before carrying the last box down the hall.